Welcome to another episode of Stowe Nation, a production of Park Media. Before I introduce today's guest, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share, and leave a 5-star review. And if you find this podcast useful in any way and want to pay us the ultimate compliment, head on over to our Patreon page where you can subscribe to be a Classic, Stealth, or Beast Mode subscriber. Welcome back to another episode of Stowe Nation. On this episode, we get to hear from Chris and Cherie from Mobile Internet Resource Center. If you thought that you knew anything about mobile internet, you're in for a big surprise because Chris and Cherie really know their stuff. On the personal side, they talk about how they got their start and why they started Mobile Internet Resource Center, how they found a vintage converted bus, why they bought a Travado, and why they decided to buy a boat as well. For the tech side, they talked about the best plans and carriers for data right now, what kind of hardware is out there, why it's extremely important to do your research to find what's best for you, why those unlimited plans aren't always the best thing, and also they do a deep dive into the new Starlink system. This episode will surely answer the majority of your questions about how to stay connected on the road. Plus there's a bonus. Chris and Cherie were nice enough to be able to give this donation community a $5 off coupon for their annual membership. You'll see how paying for an annual membership will pay for itself in the episode, so be sure to check the show notes for the coupon code. So sit back, relax, and please welcome Chris and Cherie to the Stowe Nation family. So Chris and Cherie from Mobile Internet Resource Center, welcome to Stowe Nation.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that don't know you, well, let me back up a little bit. So there's a lot of people, especially because of COVID, are getting into the nomadic lifestyle, living in their vans, RVs, boats, whatnot. And they have issues and they always have questions about how to stay connected so they can work remotely. So that being said, how did you guys start Mobile Internet Resource Center? And if you can give a backstory, that would be awesome too.
Sure. So Chris actually hit the road solo back in 2006, so over 15 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. So I set off from San Francisco in a tiny little tab teardrop clamshell camper being pulled by a Jeep out to go seek adventure and enlightenment. The last thing I expected to discover, I'm living in a trailer that doesn't have air conditioning, doesn't have a bathroom, doesn't have a refrigerator, but it has solar power and mobile internet. And the last thing I expected to meet in my first year on the road is somebody who wanted to sell her house and move in with me, but I ran into Cherie.
So we met online on a Prius forum, so we both had hybrid cars back in the day, and he had traded his in for his Jeep and had written this beautiful essay with photography and stuff about his adventures in his Prius and launching off into his new nomadic lifestyle.
Life, yep.
And I lived in Florida at the time. Had a beachside home. I ran a software company remotely from my home. I've been working from home since the early 90s, since I got out of high school, basically. And we met on this Prius forum and we just started talking and more and sharing all these commonalities we had both with this. We both loved travel. We both had done bunches of travel since childhood.
And we were both online geeks.
Both online geeks, both working in technology. And we finally got to meet in person a few months later, and it was an epic 27-hour first date stealth boondocking in San Francisco.
I took your stealth boondocking to Treasure Island, so you got wake up with that San Francisco skyline as your view, and you the nervousness of you may get that knock on your door at night, but I'm like, no, really, it'll be fine. It's like
no bathroom thing was kind of an issue. It's really hard to say, I really need to pee, and we're trying to be intimate.
We were first in line for a cafe for breakfast. It's like, you up ready for breakfast at 6 a.m. Let's go. It's like
It was your first date, and our first date included me working remotely from his RV. I was already carrying a smartphone back then that had mobile internet tethering, we call it hotspot now, ability. So I just had my laptop fueled off of his solar, and I worked remotely. At the time I was doing software development remotely for a bunch of hospitals and government agencies, and I was just worked remotely from his trailer in this amazing view, and we just knew that
we clicked.
We were meant to have
a few other dates later, and it was across various places across the country, and was like, she's moving in, and we're like really united. And the one catch was for her to be able to travel full time is she needed to be able to stay online because she had clients. She had 9 to 5 commitments to be available online, and so my background was Palm and Palm Source, the old Palm Pilots and mobile internet and mobile. Mobile geeking was my thing from the get-go, so I was like, yeah, we could do this mobile internet thing, no problem. And
so I sold my house in Florida. Eventually, it was during the recession. Eventually sold it for quite a loss and hit the road and was working remotely. We were both bloggers back in the day. We were on LiveJournal, and we just kind of made Technomadia. We just randomly picked a name out the door. It's like, oh, we should have a joint blog. A joint blog, and we just started sharing we were already sharing about our lives online when we met, and we just kind of just started this little blog. And we're answering all these questions. At first it was friends and family, like how do you get your mail, how do you plot your travels, and
how do you boondock, how do you do this, how do you do that,
and so we just started writing more and more about that. And it turns out that we were one of the few at the time that was active. There's a lot of people out there on the road at the time RVing, but we were one of the few sharing online.
And we were one of the few younger and working online at the time. That was still very, very rare because the connectivity was such a challenge, and so we would get the question over and over again, well, how are you staying connected? And we wrote blog posts about it, like we do this, we do this, we do this.
Or a new plan came out, or we were trying a new hotspot or a cellular booster when they came on the market. We would just write about it, and people would start asking about it. And it got to a point where I was spending more time answering questions about mobile internet than I was working on by running my business. And we had started there doing app development and doing consulting together, and it became something that was a hobby to something that I didn't look forward to anymore because it wasn't paying the bills. I still had to work full time, and
I made all these people saying, well, I need help with my internet, and we tried to help them as much as we could in our spare time. But then it's like somebody had the idea that first off, Cherie's like, let's compile all the blog posts into one unified book, and let's just publish a book. And
there you go.
Book.
And so we published the first edition of this back in 2013, right after my father died. I had run my business with him, and we decided we no longer wanted to continue to run that business. And so I put that book out. I thought, well, fine, I'll put a book out that will answer everyone's questions. They'll shut up, and then we can go and pursue what is next for us. And we helped the Escapees RV Club launch the Escapers group. We helped our village launch. We took on consulting projects like that. Continued on with our app development, but the questions on internet kept coming.
And of course, the book is immediately out of date because it all keeps changing too. So we revised the book, and we did this. And somebody's like, well, why don't you have a membership where we could pay for more information and make this your business? It's like, really?
Who on earth is going to pay me to tell them to, at the time, get Verizon? Yes. That was the standard answer back then.
How to get Verizon and what particular plan? That was all the catch. The devil was the details.
And we did an Indiegogo campaign back in 2014 to launch the second edition of the book because we needed to take time off of the other work commitments we had in order to rewrite the book and do it right. Mm-hmm. And the stretch goal on that Indiegogo campaign was, if you join at this level, we will also do something as a membership. And it started out as a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, and a newsletter. And fine, it was $39 a year, and we had hundreds of people sign up. Like, whoa, wait a minute.
Wow.
This is like...
People seem to want to stay connected on the road,
This is,
I guess.
number one, there is much more interest in this than we thought, and people will pay to have access to content, especially because we're coming at it from an unbiased source. We didn't want to sell stuff. We didn't want to get in the business of selling plans or gear or be affiliate incentivized to sell stuff. We just wanted to track the news and tell people
give advice,
Get advice. And so that started the Mobile Internet Resource Center and the website that it is today, and it's now 1,500 pages of content, education.
It went from side job to another year later. We're getting rid of all our other consulting, all the other projects we were doing, and now it's become our full focus. And we've got several other people that are on our team that are helping us, and it's become a big thing, and it's been kind of fun.
For sure. I know when I found you guys, it was like the gold mine. I was like, oh my gosh, this does exist. Because you read forums and whatnot, and you try to get information, but like what you were saying earlier, it gets outdated within a month, sometimes like a week, and it's like, what? And
Absolutely. Because you go on YouTube, you go on Google, you go into forums and groups, and everyone has their solution that they found, and they're sharing about it. So many YouTubers and bloggers have shared their solution, which is a great solution for the day they picked it out, for
Yeah.
their unique needs. And sure enough, even a month later, what they've shared about is no longer available or no longer the best option.
And everybody's got different
Exactly.
needs too. So people just try to copy. I saw this YouTuber who did this, this, and this, and then they come to us and they're like, "Well, it doesn't work for me." It's like, well, you do things completely different than they do.
They're
So
boondocking. You're going to urban areas. They just watch Netflix. You need to work remotely and do video conferencing. It's
like,
completely different needs that you have to solve for.
it's not simple like when you live in a house and you just call Comcast and say plug in the cable. It's definitely not simple like that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, which is great because I love what you guys are doing. And you guys mentioned something about being a subscriber. Can you go into detail about that?
Right. So, like I said, we did not want to be. There's many ways to fund businesses online, from advertising and sponsorships, affiliate deals, and things like that. And we didn't want to do that. We come from a gift economy background.
Burning Man style. Yeah.
We're burners, and we wanted to be able to give information. And I don't like my content cluttered with advertising, and I don't want to be giving anyone advice that is incentivized because we might have a financial interest in it. So we went with a member funding model where we give away a whole bunch of free content. You've got our YouTube channel at the Mobile Internet Resource Center. We have free news articles. We have a lot of free guides to get people started. But the premium membership, which we call the MIA, or Mobile Internet Aficionados, pay an annual
I like that
fee.
name.
Yes.
And for the annual fee, they get the more in-depth content. They get access to our classrooms.
They get a forum where they can actually talk and interact and share.
They get advice from us. We do some.
Oh, wow.
We
Webinars and stuff.
We do webinars, and we do have a video course now. And those video course students, they do get private sessions with our staff to get their questions answered. They get alerts, like if we know a new plan is coming or a
Our
top
plan
pick.
is leaving. It's
More
actually
importantly,
sometimes,
we get sometimes insider tips that, Verizon tomorrow is taking away that sweet plan that we were telling everyone to get. Members, go get it before everyone else.
This is your last warning. You have
Yeah.
24 hours. Go storm the stores and get this before it's gone, because it'll be grandfathered in. And so our members get kind of that like extra level of alerts, but we try to still give a ton of stuff for free, and then just say, hey, if you're getting this for free, thank our members, because they're the ones who are supporting us, and we're
Making it
not
possible.
cluttering it with ads, and we're not giving you affiliate stuff and all that annoyances. So the model has worked out really well too, because we've had a lot of people who support us, which has been great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, how much is I can't talk. How much is a subscription for the MIA?
So it's $97 a year, and it also gets you a lot of discounts too. Because instead of taking affiliate relationships, when a company comes at us with that, we say, hey,
Give us a discount we can pass on to our members instead of paying us to refer them to you.
So all the affiliate payouts that a vendor might give to an influencer for their community, we instead give to our members.
And so depending on what hardware you're buying, it's actually quite a few people, they more than make up for their membership in the savings they get from the companies when they go and buy their hardware. So it's like, it works out nicely.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm so glad to see that you guys are out there for the community, not for yourself as an influencer, I think that's a rarity these days.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't track it too closely, but we do us, and we sleep at night, and we know that the information we're giving out is based on our technology backgrounds, because we have merged our passions, which is travel, technology, and helping people, because that's what our blog had been all along, and
cats
and the cat, yes. This business model has just really fit who we are and what we want to give to the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for everything that you guys do, really.
It's worked out well for us. It's been fun.
So, to get a little more on the personal side, I can't help but notice that you guys are on a boat, but you also have an RV too, right?
We have 2 RVs.
Yes, we started from that 16-foot little tiny tab clamshell with a Jeep, like the smallest trailer you could live in.
2 people can live in.
Yes,
and not kill each other.
But we were newly in love and all that stuff, and but we quickly decided that the one downside of the tab was that you had to every day it was a bed or a table. There wasn't both. So we were always converting back and forth to work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, and we want something slightly bigger. We still want it small enough to tow with the Jeep, and we actually went and fell in love with the Oliver travel trailers, had one custom made, and it's only 17 feet, it's only slightly larger, but it had air conditioning, it had a full bathroom and a shower, it had more solar, and it had a separate table from the bed, which was the big upgrade. And
we did that
for
for 3 years.
3 years living in that.
And then we moved over to the Virgin Islands for a season. And then when we came back, because we were contemplating at that time if we wanted to switch to sailing, as boat travel had always been.
We talked about it on our very first date. It's like, someday we'll do boats.
So we thought sailing was going to be it for us. But sailing is a lot of work, and we're still working full time. So we knew that we couldn't still carry on a full-time job and sail. And we also figured out we didn't really want to do open water passages. We didn't have the dream of circumnavigating the world. We really like
coastal cruising.
So we put that idea on the back burner after getting back from the Virgin Islands, and we decided then to get a vintage bus.
We'd gotten bitten by the bus bug, and a friend of ours had been restoring a bus. And here's our mini bus, because our big one's in Arizona. So we went on an Amtrak rail pass and went around the country looking at vintage buses all around the place. We sold our Oliver in an instant for more than we paid for it, which is kind of crazy. But the RV market was weird, and so we're like, okay, we now are homeless. Our stuff's all in a storage unit. We are living out of backpacks, and we traveled the country to look for our bus, and we found this just over 10 years ago.
Yeah, we've had the bus for 10 years.
Wow.
In Arizona. It was sitting on a storage lot in Yuma, Arizona. It was just this beauty, a 1961 GM 4106 that used to be a passenger bus that had been turned into an RV, and then we started reconverting it and re-upgrading it and doing all sorts of stuff.
Full-timed in that until 2017, and our goal with that was it's going to be our land-based home in the U.S., and we would park it for times and go do other adventures. Took us a while to get around to actually realizing that. And we did some other side adventures, like we backpacked to Alaska for one summer and did some other things like that. But 2017, we decided it was time to get into this boating thing, and we had shifted what we wanted to do with boating, and that was pursuing the Great Loop, which is a circumnavigation of the eastern part of the U.S., and it's all going up the Intracoastal Waterway into New York, into the canal systems, up into the Great Lakes, and then taking the river systems back down to the Gulf.
A lot of people don't realize that the eastern half of the United States can technically be considered an island, because you can go around the whole thing in a boat.
So we decided that was going to be our next adventure, so we bought a motorboat. So we're sitting right now inside of our Bayliner 4788, which is a 47-foot motor yacht. We purchased in 2017 to start doing the Great Loop, which is typically done in a year. It's 6,000 miles. But what you don't realize in boats is they move at 7 miles per hour, whereas RVs move at 60-ish. So it's a lot more time actually driving and in motion. And when you're working full time, that's a lot of your time spent in transition.
And we like to go to cool places and stay for a while, not just like be there for a day. So we were like the non-typical loopers. We call ourselves slow loopers, where we like to, we spent over a month in Charleston, living downtown in an incredibly beautiful city. And we've done several other cities like that as we've worked our way around. So we only made it on the Great Loop we started in Punta Gorda, Florida, made it around and as far north as Charleston. And then, things caused us to backtrack, and we're actually now back down in Florida.
Something called a pandemic.
Yeah, there was a pandemic.
But anyway, the general intention is when we get back on the loop, and we can't do the loop right now because Canada is still closed, and Canada is part of the loop.
You go through the canals.
We're going to spend a lot more time up in the northern parts, up in Canada, in New York. It gets cold there apparently, and you can't boat in ice or something. I don't understand these concepts.
What?
She's a Florida girl. She's barely ever seen snow in her life, so.
So we're going to need to store the boat for the winter seasons, and
then
so
we'll go back to the bus, and so we'll have the bus in the Arizona and the desert Southwest, which is where we love.
So then we thought, okay, we'll just keep a car, or we'll rent a car, or we'll do a train across country, or we'll find some way to get across country. And we never sold our little Mini Cooper that we towed behind the bus when we bought the boat. And we found it's actually relatively easy to hopscotch a car at our pace, because we go cruising for 2 weeks.
And we've gone 100 miles.
Because you're going really slow. Yeah. It's not that difficult to get the car and just bring it up to us, and then we got our car with us for a week or so, or for the month or two that we might be in a new location. And then we started thinking, well, what if we just drove the car across country? Well, driving a Mini Cooper across country is
Miserable.
miserable.
It's not a cross-country vehicle.
Especially with a cat on your shoulder the whole way. So, well, what if we got something we could live in?
So then we started looking at vans, and we're like, well, a van is still would fit in marina parking lots, and we'd be able to use it as our daily driver. Or gets a small van that would fit in a regular parking spot. So we started looking at vans, and we fell in love with the layout of the Winnebago Travato, particularly the G layout, and got one, and it's been fabulous. Pardon the airboats going by; they're a little noisy.
It's okay. It just puts the atmosphere.
Yes. We're in a marina that has
a boat ramp right there.
A boat ramp there, and there's apparently airboat tours today going out. So.
Oh wow! It's all good.
Yeah, so we've had the Travato now for just over 2 years, and it's great. It's because now it allows us. We've been in Sanford, Florida, for the pandemic for the last year plus. And it's just been a wonderful way for us to still get out to the state parks, get out camping and do RV trips. And then it's very comfortable, slow pace to get back to the bus in Arizona. So yeah, it's been a great combination for us. So we have a fleet now. We have a nomadic fleet.
A bus, a van, and a boat.
Wow. You guys are what I aspire to be, so. So on your Travato, just out of curiosity, do you have the lithium system in there?
Yes.
Yeah, we actually started with because we weren't sure if the van was going to be for us. We started with the basic Travato G, and then upgraded just last fall to GL with the lithium. So because it's actually for the cat, so that we can leave the air conditioner on for her when we're stopping someplace.
Everything's about
everything's about that.
As it should be, right? That's cool. So to switch gears and to kind of get into business, shall we say, I'm just going to go right off the bat and ask you probably what you've been asked a trillion times, which is, as of right now, what is the best deal out there for someone who is a digital nomad?
Deal for what?
Get data?
For data. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, for cellular data, just in the last couple of months, both AT&T and T-Mobile have started offering legit 100 gigabyte data plans that you can use on a hotspot or a router, depending upon your choice of gear. And they're priced $50 to $55 per month. So those are the current best options for legit.
Straight from the big carriers.
Straight from the big carriers. Don't have to worry about them just cutting you off randomly. For Verizon, they're in a tough space right now because they do not really offer any attractive high cap data plans, but Visible, their prepaid subsidiary, is probably the best deal going in mobile internet right now. It's a smartphone plan, so you can only use it on a smartphone, but includes unlimited data on the smartphone and unlimited mobile hotspot use. So you use that personal mobile hotspot feature on your phone, so you connect to the phone, to your laptops and things. The data is via hotspot is capped at 5 megabits per second, which is plenty for most things online these days. And the plan is only $25 per month. So
it is a ridiculously cheap plan, because I mean that's also a phone plan too. So you got phone numbers and texting and all that stuff. But the catch with Visible is that Visible is the lowest priority on Verizon's network. So it can be very, very fast if you're not in a congested area. But if you're in a congested area, it can become very, very frustrating. So Visible's often a great backup plan to have, or a secondary way online, but it's not, for a lot of people, it's not necessarily the best only way online.
Right, and those 100 gigabyte plans on T-Mobile and AT&T, 100 gigabytes is a fair amount of data, but for a lot of us that are especially doing a lot of video work, you need to do video conferencing, you want to stream Netflix, 100 gigabytes is maybe about a week's worth of data for a lot of people.
Yes. Oh, wow.
So you either need to have multiple plans of that. So that's what steers a lot of people towards the third-party resellers, which you're going to see them in a lot of influencers promoting companies. Oh boy, the airboats are just going around in circles outside my window. Great.
They sound like they're right out.
Yes,
there's an airboat with a big propeller right there. It's like,
oh wow!
They're waiting for the boat ramp, so they're spinning in circles.
Yes. But you can see the third-party resellers, and you might see them online as Nomad Internet, OTR Mobile, Travel Data, the RV IT
There's
guy.
literally 100 of them.
Hundreds of these guys out there, and they have found ways to get data plans. Sometimes moderately legit, sometimes
not so
really
legit.
not legit. And they sell them for $100, $150 a month. They promote them as unlimited, but they usually are safe to use for 200 or 300 gigabytes a month. But the problem with those is, depending upon what the plan is behind the scene, as soon as the carrier catches on, they just cut them off. And so we have countless reports of those plans. You wake up in the morning, you just have no internet connection whatsoever.
Your SIM was deactivated.
But while they work, they're fantastic until they don't. And that's the problem with them. And that's why we recommend that if you go with one of the third-party resellers, it is a great way to get a lot of data, is just be prepared that that plan could go away and have an immediate backup option if you need to be online.
And just in general, having a backup option, having a way online on at least 2 carriers for anybody who's doing anything of significance online is super important, because sometimes we've literally seen somebody come on, we have camped, great signal, amazing speeds, and there's a cell tower right over there. You see a Verizon truck pull up the tower, and the tower turns off because they're doing maintenance, and your internet goes away. And it's so great to be able to switch to AT&T.
But cellular is very, very variable. So,
Yes.
the signal strength that you get is dependent upon how close you are to the tower. It's dependent upon the equipment that you're using. It's dependent upon how many people in the area are using that same cellular connection. The more people you have, the slower it gets for everybody. So having multiple options on different carriers gives you that redundancy and variety to try another option at each location.
Yeah. And there's even advanced techniques. There's even advanced techniques that you can actually combine connections and use bonding, so you can combine like Verizon and AT&T together simultaneously with a router, and then
that's getting really geeky.
Oh yeah, but there are ways that you.
Oh no, let's geek out. If you haven't noticed, I'm Asian. I love the geekiness. So.
Yes. Well, yeah, so basically people can dial it up to whatever level of complexity and cost and gear that suits what their needs are. That's why we're always telling people, don't necessarily copy what you see online. Decide what fits you, both your geek level and your budget, and how seriously you need to be reliably connected. If you have to work, if you're doing remote work and you have to be online at a company Zoom meeting every morning at 9 a.m., that's much more higher requirements than somebody who's like, well, I just need to get my email once a week. It's like, okay, you don't need to spend nearly the same as the other person.
Right, exactly. Do you mind going back and touching on that, combining the two companies into, it sounds like one? Do you mind clarifying that, and the hardware that you need for that?
So the technology is called bonding, and basically what it does is it takes multiple internet sources. So those internet sources might be, maybe you have a connection with AT&T and you have one with Verizon.
And maybe the campground Wi-Fi or the McDonald's next to you or something.
Or maybe Starlink, which we'll be talking about later as well, is you take those multiple connections and you use a VPN type service to combine them into one connection. So if one goes down, the other's there to take over.
Yeah, and it is a pretty the gear. It's you can do it kind of, and the basic level with software called Speedify and stuff, like let a laptop do it with multiple hotspots plugged in, or you can have fancier things where it's built into a router, and there's like PepWave routers in particular are known for that. So that's one of the reasons PepWave routers have become very, very popular with working nomads. So they're higher end gear, and it's a little bit of cost, but we've got a guide at mobileinternetinfo.com/bonding that kind of explains the concepts and the tiers, because there's also there's different ways to approach this and different end results, and it's not always bonding makes sense in some cases, but in other cases it actually can hurt you. So you got to understand the trade-offs.
Gotcha.
Definitely a deep topic that you need to get a good foundation on mobile internet first before diving into bonding. We see a lot of people talk about it online and YouTube channels and things like that, and a lot of people dive in and say, I want to bond, and they don't understand it enough. They don't even understand the foundation yet.
Yes,
because it's kind of like it's really, really advanced,
medium advanced.
Gotcha. But it is.
Yeah, but you gotta have the basics first.
You should understand what Wi-Fi and cellular are first before going into bonding.
Right.
Yes.
So you can't just come out of the gate and be like, I want to bond.
People do that, and then they get confused and frustrated, and they're spending way more money than they need to until they realize that, oh no, I need to bond sometimes, but not in simpler, different ways.
How much generally does that cost for the hardware? And I know the plan that you get for each carrier kind of varies, but just generally, like, how much are we talking about?
So kind of probably the top option for hardware right now for those that want to have multiple cellular carriers on the
Active at
same
once.
at the same time is the Pepwave Max Transit Duo. So this is a router that has two modems inside of it. So you can have two carriers active at once, and then each modem has two SIM cards on it, so you can switch each modem between two different carriers. Takes a couple minutes to switch, but you do have two active connections. You can also connect to a campground Wi-Fi source with that, and you can also have another internet source by Ethernet. So that could be a Starlink, it could be another, maybe a hotspot with Ethernet out. So you can have all these different options coming into it. And that router is $999.
So it is a pricey router.
And that's not including, like, you probably want antennas to go with it to get better signal. So most people are spending about $1,300 to $1,500 for a setup for like that.
And on the other end of the spectrum, there's software, Speedify software, which basically does all of this in software. It's not a router. It's not sharing out to a lot of your other devices. It's something you run on your computer and plug in all the hotspots to just the generic hotspots you'd be using otherwise, or your phones and stuff, plug them into the USB ports, and Speedify runs on your computer and does that. And Speedify is only it's basically less than $10 a month for their subscription service to do their bonding. So you can do it, kind of in the router and kind of more like pro gear level, or you can do it in software and kind of consumer gear level. And so there's different ways to approach this, and definitely start experimenting with the basic ways first sometimes.
And by the way, our members, our mobile internet aficionados, get discounts on all of that stuff with the vendors we work with. That when you're talking about a $1,500 setup with routers and
it's
antennas,
really nice to have a discount.
And we have vendors that give a 10% discount. Well, suddenly that $97 membership that also gives you the background and information and education to even make those choices and understand them suddenly pays for itself.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree. So you guys mentioned Starlink. That's the new hot thing, right? What are your guys'
Everybody
opinions?
wants to talk about Starlink.
All right, let's talk about it.
So just for those who've been living under a rock and who haven't heard about Starlink, Starlink is Elon Musk's and SpaceX's next generation satellite broadband internet constellation that they're deploying. Eventually, it'll be tens of thousands of satellites. That the goal is to have ridiculously fast internet available to everyone on Earth.
No, not everyone on Earth.
Well, yeah, available over the Earth, covering the Earth, with latencies, because traditional satellites were at geostationary orbit, so they're 26,000 miles away. So traditional satellites could be decently fast, but have a long ping time, that pause of the speed of light of the signal going back and forth. Because the Starlink satellites are only a few hundred miles up, they can be just as fast as cellular and cable, and they can be like a ground-based experience. So people are very excited that Starlink's going to be the solution for everything. But there's also a lot of downsides for Starlink that people are kind of overlooking or getting overly excited about, and they're not considering, particularly for mobile users and RVers and stuff.
First is the size of the dish. It's right now currently about 2 feet,
25 inches
diameter. If you're traveling in a van, that's a consideration.
It's a lot of storage space.
Because if you're going out into the boonies, where Starlink is going to make probably the most sense, where you don't have a cellular option, you probably also are somewhat off grid and maybe want solar to power your RV. So that means that there's not room on your small van to put that dish and have enough solar to meet all your power demands. Never mind even talking about the power demands of the Starlink. We'll get into that in a moment. So the size of it. And then if you want to do a ground deploy, well, that's a lot to carry in your RV in store. If you have big bays like we do on our bus, it's no problem. In a van, it's a little bit more of an issue. So you have to consider that. And then you have to consider the type of places that you like to camp. If you like being in places with big open sky, no trees around, no rocks around, no obstacles around, then Starlink is going to work fantastically for you. But the way that these satellites work, because they're constantly moving across the sky, and you have to keep a fixed location.
The dish tracks them. It tracks them in solid state, so the dish isn't moving as it's tracking them, but the satellites are moving across the sky. And so if you're in the woods and it's the satellite, with a traditional old school satellite, you could aim between the trees, and as long as because the satellite stays in one position in the sky, you get the dish aimed and you're set. Starlink, as it's moving, you will have dropouts anytime it passes behind even a little branch, and the next satellite coming across. And so right now, people with Starlink are saying, well, I'm only getting, I'm connected, 55 minutes of the hour, but I only have 5 minutes of dropouts. And it's like, okay, if you're just doing streaming and regular email stuff, no big deal. But if you're trying to do Zoom and you have a couple minutes of dropouts every hour because there's trees and obstacles in your area, that might not be workable. And the more trees, if you want to camp in the woods, Starlink is probably not for you.
The other issue will be congestion. Is just like we talked about with cellular, the more people that you get on one cellular tower, the speeds go down for everybody. The same thing's going to be true with Starlink. Is everyone is connecting in one area to that satellite that's going overhead across, and it has only a limited amount of capacity. And already people are finding when they try to activate Starlink at a new location, they're getting a message from Starlink. Oh, we're at capacity in this location.
You can't use it here.
You can't use it here.
And so right now, Starlink's target market, they say that mobile users is important for them down the road, but they do not officially condone or support mobile users. So they're focused on fixed residential, rural, and people who, and for some of these people, it's the fastest internet they've ever seen because they've never had real good internet in those places. But for RVers, if you want to change your location with Starlink, right now the system doesn't move automatically. So if you take your Starlink to a new location and turn it on, it won't work unless you are at your home address. And
you can now change your home address, right, but you need to do that either before you get to your new location and find out if they even have service available, or you got to get there. You have to have another internet way online to change the
location to, because you can only be connected within about 15 miles of your home address. So you've got to keep changing your home address as you travel, and you go to a new location. And a lot of places that nomads want to go, they'll say either, there's huge parts of the country they haven't turned on Starlink yet, so they'll say, oh, well, there's no service here yet, it's coming in late 2021, maybe 2022, or they'll say, oh, we're already at capacity there, and sorry. And so there's a decent community of RVers who are traveling with Starlink and having some amazing experiences and getting 300 megabits per second speeds and stuff, but it's not reliable yet. It's not even close to being. It's not
something you can depend on, and it probably won't be for quite a while. Starlink is going to be continuing.
Yeah, they've got a lot of ways to go.
They're going to be putting more satellites in. That's going to increase capacity and coverage. So some things will improve. The other gotcha with Starlink is the amount of power it takes in order to
keep connected to those satellites.
And the current generation is using about 60 to 70 watts.
Yeah, the very first dishes that shipped were using over 100 watts of power. So that's a lot of power, particularly if you want to try and stay connected 24/7. That's more than your refrigerator is using. It's more than many other things. So unless you have a huge solar system, or you're only going to turn Starlink on for limited times while you need to get work done, that's a big draw on your power budget. And they've gotten it down to more like the newer Starlinks it's like 60, 70 watts, maybe 55, but that's still, compared to cellular, which might be a device using just like less than 10 watts of power, so probably less than 5 watts, that is a lot more power to budget. And for anybody who's doing off-grid stuff, that is a huge consideration.
Yeah, that is actually. You definitely need a lithium battery for that, and a good way to recharge that battery.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. So it's gonna cause off-grid folks to really rethink their power systems to do this. And there'll be trade-offs. Like if you're only going out for 3 or 4 months out of the year, is it worth it for that expense?
Yeah, and
or are you okay? So I think for a lot of nomads, Starlink is not going to be the only internet solution, which is what we're seeing a lot of people fantasizing about. It's going to be a component.
It'll be complementary to cellular.
You're still going to want a cellular backup. If you're going into urban areas or places where there's congestion, you're going to need that cellular connection. If you're going places with trees or next to a building or something like that.
Where there's obstructions, yeah.
Or you're in a ravine or something like that where you've got limited sky access. You're still going to need other ways in. So I think it's going to be an approach. It's going to be an awesome new option to bring into a mobile internet arsenal. It's not going to be for most the only solution.
And I think a lot of people assume that when you're out in deep desert boondocking that there's no cellular, but you'd be surprised at how many places where you're out in the deep desert where you can get amazingly fast cellular too, which we've discovered many times in the past, because there's nobody else out there. If there's a cell tower that's beaming down into this valley and you're the only person on it, you're getting some of the fastest cellular speeds you might run across in some places. So particularly if you've got multiple carriers to tap into, you have options. But Starlink is great. We're super excited about it, but we definitely kind of give people the reality check of it's not the be all end all universal replacement for everything else.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And thank you for.
So.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what?
It's like we wish it was going to be the be all end because our exit plan at the Mobile Internet Resource Center used to be we were just going to redirect all traffic to Starlink.
Like get Starlink. There's one answer, but no.
But it's not proving out to be that way. So we're actually been building up our staff to
cover more options,
to keep covering all the options because we're ready to step back a little bit and not do the work.
We've been hiring more people so that there's more people who are covering all this stuff for us, and we actually have one of our staff has been testing Starlink since the very day it shipped to regular people. So.
Oh, wow. How much does Starlink cost? Do you have to pay for the hardware and the subscription?
Right now, the hardware is so right now the hardware is $499, but it is costing Starlink about over $1,000. So they're subsidizing that cost right now, and then the service is $99 per month, and it is currently unlimited without any restrictions. But they are in beta, and they're calling it better than nothing beta.
So stuff is subject to change. They actually want to get the price down to $250, $300 over a couple of years. So. Rushing into Starlink means you're going to get the first generation hardware that uses more power, costs more, all this other stuff. So there's definitely track Starlink. We put Starlink articles out all the time. It will be there's no reason for most people, unless you really want to be on the bleeding edge, to rush into it this year.
Gotcha. That's great advice. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think people think of it automatically as a be all end all kind of thing, and then they get it and they're like, oh. Well, crap. So that is fantastic advice.
It's one of those, it's going to be fantastic when it works, but you're going to, don't ditch
your other plans yet.
Great. That's fantastic advice. Now I'd like to move into some of the community's questions, if you don't mind.
Yes, sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to mention names, but it's just going to be first names for, privacy purposes. But the first one is from Peng. He asks, this is kind of a statement to put the question in context. So it seems like every phone company has their own hotspot device, Verizon, Jetpack, AT&T, etc. I have a dual SIM unlocked cell phone that I use for international travel. For the phone, I can buy 2 SIM cards and 2 different companies, plug them both in, and have the ability to switch between the 2 networks, use whichever has a better reception. My question is there an equivalent unlocked Wi-Fi hotspot device that can accept multiple SIM cards from different phone companies, preferably one that accepts both Verizon and AT&T, since these 2 seem to have the best coverage?
Absolutely.
So mobile hotspot devices tend to be sold by the carriers. So the manufacturers optimize them for the carriers, for the frequency bands that each transmits over. And each carrier has their frequency bands. There's some crossover. And you can use, as long as it's unlocked, for all Verizon devices tend to be unlocked, and as long as you've had your AT&T device unlocked, they will work on the other carriers, but they're not optimized.
And they only have 1 SIM slot, so you've got to manually swap them around.
So what that means is you might get their primary coverage, but you're not going to get the newer coverage that each of the carriers are specializing in. Like, for instance, AT&T has been deploying a lot of their coverage on band 14, which is their FirstNet band. Well, a Verizon device might not have band 14 on it, or a T-Mobile device might not have that coverage. So you're missing out on some of that potential coverage. So it works in a pinch, but if you're wanting to optimize for it, if you're wanting multi-carrier support, that's when you want to look at a mobile router, because those are not made by the carriers themselves. They're not distributed by them. So they're going to be more cross-carrier compatible. And that's when you're looking at things like a PepWave, a MoFi, InstiConnect, or something like that.
Yeah. And so and there's even some very affordable version, mobile cellular routers that are, can give you, just like his phone, you'll have 2 SIM slots and you can switch between them via software. And the router itself will talk to every carrier. So there's definitely options out there. Check out that PepWave Gear guide and stuff.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So the next person, Michelle, she actually has a lot of questions. So,
you can just make up a name for each question. You won't know.
Yeah, but they'll know when they listen. So, but So Michelle asks, do you see 5G as an asset for cellular modems currently?
Um, on T-Mobile, 5G can make a really huge difference. T-Mobile's way ahead as far as actually taking advantage of 5G. On Verizon and AT&T, particularly in the rural and suburban areas and the places where RVers might tend to go, 5G is not going to be much different than 4G, and it's really not worth investing in. So it kind of depends which carrier you're with. On T-Mobile, I'd go, 5G is worth effort.
So just keep in mind with 5G, there's 3 flavors of it. There's low band, which is what you're going to get out in the rural areas, then that's what T-Mobile's deploying a lot on. There's new spectrum that's going to be mid-band, and that's going to be used in a lot of more suburban areas. And then there's the millimeter wave, and that is that ultra fast connections that you're hearing that a lot of people associate 5G with, and that's what you're only getting for
super short range,
few blocks within city centers. And that's the millimeter wave stuff is not what us RVers are mostly interested in. I don't personally camp near stadiums in downtown city centers too often. So it's the mid band and low band, or what the industry calls sub 6, under 6 gigahertz frequency bands. That's where the future is going to be. But right now, LTE is at its pinnacle. It is the hardware that's out there for LTE. If you get the high end LTE stuff, that stuff is going to be solid for the next few years. And it's an evolution. Just like in 2010, 2011, when LTE came out, it started slow and it built up.
So the end of the 5G decade is setting the foundation for the next 10 years of cellular evolution. And so investing now, you might have hardware that will be good for several years, but you're also the network hasn't really caught up. And other than T-Mobile, AT&T and Verizon, their networks really aren't there yet. And by the time their networks will start to be there in another year or two, there would be better, faster, cheaper hardware. So for most people, I wouldn't necessarily encourage them to worry too much about future-proofing and buying 5G hardware now.
Don't hesitate with it with your consumer products, your smartphones, your tablets.
There's no downside, but I wouldn't go out of your way.
If you're looking into mobile routers and things like that, maybe not. Chris, actually, we just put out earlier this last month, because it's July. We just put out a massive 5G industry update, which you can find on our resource center on the front page.
Yeah, that talks about all the trade-offs and why you might want to wait or when it makes sense to buy 5G. So that if you're considering 5G at all, definitely go read that and understand the trade-offs.
Or watch the video.
Or watch the video version. Yeah.
We go both ways, written and video.
That's awesome. So the next question is which company tends to run the best deals?
Which company for what?
Yeah, deals
for data.
We went over the top picks. So, all the carriers are constantly competing on price and data. So we're constantly tracking what the current best data plans are, which you can go to mobileinternetinfo.com /plan picks, and every quarter we put out a video on our YouTube channel going over the best data plans for each of the carriers.
Yeah, because they compete with each other, they go back and forth, and
they all put out good deals at some time or another. So
no problem.
Which company is making the fastest gain in coverage? Is it T-Mobile?
T-Mobile, yeah, by far.
Definitely T-Mobile. So T-Mobile, 5 years ago was definitely in third place. They last year merged with Sprint, so they acquired Sprint had a whole bunch of spectrum acquisition that they hadn't used yet. So T-Mobile now owns that, and they have the resources to deploy it. And particularly in 5G, they are the leader in 5G coverage. And as far as combined coverage with LTE and 5G, Verizon is still ahead, AT&T, and T-Mobile
it's now basically a three-way race for coverage. Every carrier has their own strong areas, particularly some certain rural small towns. There's some places that they're like old legacy Verizon areas or AT&T areas where they're basically the only carrier in small town, random Texas and stuff like that.
And that's what SRVers have to pay attention to. Is you can't just look at the carrier with the best coverage. It's the carrier with the best coverage and location you're at. And we're choosing a mobile lifestyle, which means our location changes, which is why we preach
carry two.
Carry at least 2, if not all 3 in your setup.
That's a good idea. So speaking of the coverage, which one particularly covers the best in the east and south regions?
They all 3 of them.
East and south is actually pretty good for everybody.
Yeah, east everyone has it, but it really it really comes down to when you zoom in on those coverage maps as
like
where which towns, which specific area you want to be. Sometimes when you're in a campground, which side of the campground, it can be that variable. So definitely supplement your travel planning with like going to Campendium or freecampsites.net or places where people are recording coverage for the different carriers. We actually wrote an app. One of the first apps we wrote is called Coverage with a question mark, and it's got the carrier's coverage maps on your phone, so you can overlay the different T-Mobile, AT&T. You can turn off 3G, so you're just getting the fast stuff, and just see what the coverage is in the places you want to go.
Yeah, so basically build your own custom coverage map for yourself. And we wrote it for our own needs over 10 years ago. It's been in the App Store for 10 years, and it is a handy tool just to kind of get a forecast of which direction do we want to travel to have our best chance of staying connected.
And then the next question is, are there any warnings or considerations for those new to the mobile internet? Like, what should they watch out for?
Don't spend too much money too fast. Some people rush in.
Yeah, don't copy your setup from another video you saw.
Until you understand your own needs.
Right. You really need to start with understanding your needs. How much data you need. Is speed important to you? Is reliability important to you? Are you boondocking in remote locations? Are you driveway surfing with friends that are in solid locations? Can you use their Wi-Fi?
Does Wi-Fi matter to you? Is only cellular matter? Do you have a lot of devices, or are you just staying connected with one laptop, or do you have like your light bulbs in your RV on Wi-Fi and stuff? Like, how many devices are you trying to keep connected?
So really try to get a good handle on your needs and get a good foundation on what the options are out there so you can weigh the risks. And we see so many people who will just go and copy a blogger or influencer's setup, and they get it. They don't understand it because they don't understand the technology. They can't get it working. We just saw a major influencer talk about a device that she had purchased based upon
somebody else's recommendation.
She could never figure it out, never get it working. So she ditched it and went to a different solution. And like, oh, if you just read one, spent 5 minutes on a guide, maybe
you wouldn't have gone that expensive mistake. It's like, okay.
Yeah. We see that all the time, unfortunately. And just taking some time to understand it. This is not an easy thing to do.
It's not like in fixed houses where there's usually just one good option for your neighborhood. You call whatever the cable company is, and they come and send a truck, and you're set. You've got to do a little homework, and it pays off in the end.
Okay. And speaking of homework, what's the best way for someone to figure out how much data they actually need to use before jumping into it?
So first is checking to see if your current provider gives you that information. Some do, some don't. Some cable companies do and some don't. If you can get that information, that gives you a good handle right there. Another one is we've seen a lot of people, you can get tracker systems for your computer, maybe your smartphone, to track how much data you're using. But if you're currently like on a cable connection, you also need to keep in mind, like if you subscribe to content over cable and you don't currently stream all of your TV content, you need to keep in mind that you're on the road. Is your streaming going to go up? Are you going to be doing more Netflix and less watching over-the-air television or cable television? So that's going to make an impact. So one thing we recommend some people do is go get a prepaid hotspot plan, or use the hotspot off their smartphone plan that they have right now. Use that for 2 or 3 days and get a handle on how much you use, and then extrapolate that for the month to get a handle on it. We find that, it can vary. Some people can get by just fine on 20 to 30 gigabytes a month if they have minimal needs.
Some people need 500, 600.
Right. It varies so much depending on
and streaming in particular is the thing that can burn so much data. And we encourage people, we actually have a whole huge guide that kind of like dives deep into streaming at the mobileinternetinfo.com/TV of like, okay, if you want to get your Netflix fix and your HBO and all this stuff over the internet, there are ways to do this that you can avoid destroying your data plan. Like one of the best is if you have a smartphone plan or a tablet plan that has unlimited data only on the smartphone or tablet itself, you can watch on the tablet, but like who wants to watch on your phone? Who wants to watch on a small screen? But if you get an HDMI out cable, plug that into your big TV in your RV, you can watch without burning through your limited hotspot data.
And then another trick that we try to encourage people to consider is getting a cellular enabled tablet. because you can very oftentimes add on an unlimited data plan to your tablet for $20 a month to your existing smartphone plan. And there's a heck of a lot of stuff you can do on your tablet. They have built-in cameras and microphones. So we often will do our webinars and our Zoom conferences, and we do our video chatting with our parents over our cellular-enabled tablet using that unlimited plan. You can stream on it. You can get a little keyboard for it, and
and that's a $20 a month plan that you can use it as much as you want.
There's actually really great video editing software. So for YouTube content creators, you can do your video edits right on the tablet and then upload them on that unlimited plan right to YouTube. So it's
kind of a back door that hasn't really been shut down yet.
Well, I hope it doesn't shut down. That's actually what I do, is to stream like all the Netflix and whatnot. So I'm full time. I don't know if I told you that, but I'm full time in my Storyteller. But when it comes down to like winding down at night and watching like whatever binge show I'm into at the time, I use my tablet. And I think you're absolutely right. Like it's fantastic because I have AT&T's their business plan for 100 gigabytes with priority is what I have. So far it's been working for me, but I'm also like very concerned about like getting, because with that plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, as soon as you hit that 100 gigabyte hotspot, they basically shut you down to like 256 kbs or something like that. Like
128 kilobytes.
Or 128, yeah.
Yeah, but when you add a tablet onto that plan for $20 a month, that tablet also gets 100 gigabytes of hotspot data. So suddenly you've got 200 gigabytes right there. Plus you got all the unlimited data right on the tablet.
So $20 more and you get another 100 gigabytes.
Well, I know where I'm going after we finish this podcast. I'm going to the AT&T store. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Thank you. Yep. But, I'm definitely going. Okay, so moving on. What about emergency communication? What do you guys recommend?
Well, having multiple cell carriers gives you multiple ways to get a message out.
Right. Those dual SIM smartphones now, be able to carry two data plans in your smartphone is great. But if you're going off in the boonies and you don't want to go Starlink yet, just getting a handheld satellite communicator like the Garmin InReach, the Zoleo, there's several others out there.
Yeah. And so these little tiny little handheld things talk to satellites super, super slow. So they basically, you can't surf the web, you can't do anything, but you can send text messages, which for safety and emergency communications is all you really need. And they'll also let people track you and see where your location is. So when we've been cruising in remote and doing more remote places, or actually when we were down some desert stuff, we always kept an InReach with us and active, and it gives you that little peace of mind. And then people that you can have, your emergency contacts can also reach you and send you a text message that will get you anywhere in the world.
And some of them also give you access to weather reports, which can be important as well. And they usually have an SOS button on it too that you can contact.
Just press one button and emergency's on its way.
Okay. And then this is the last question. What security considerations should mobile users be aware of?
I think talking about privacy and security, like banking and things online. First of all, is if you're using like a public Wi-Fi source, that's probably your bigger risk. But a lot of people get really concerned with banking and things like that. But the thing to keep in mind is most websites these days use SSL encryption. So if you've got that little lock on the top of your browser next to where you put the URL in, that site has a secure encrypted connection. So if someone is spying on your, like in your campground as you're using on the public Wi-Fi, they can see that you have gone to, let's say, Bank of America's website. But once you're on Bank of America's website, everything is encrypted. And they're not going to be able to see your username or your password or anything like that, or your banking information, because that's all through that encrypted tunnel. So the most important thing is always make sure that you're connecting to websites with SSL, that is on there with the website you're surfing.
And banks and stuff like that won't even let you connect if you're not using it.
All the social media apps, a lot of website, everyone has an SSL certificate. So that's the first step. Next step is never, ever use the same username and password combination, because if someone does get, let's say you go to, I don't know if you guys have a forum, but we have a forum. Let's say you use your first initial and last name and you have a generic password that you use for non-high risk websites. Well, if someone gets that, they suddenly can start trying that everywhere.
Right. So if you're reusing the password, there's automated hacking software that will kind of catch that password that you've used on the non-secure site, which was easy for them to eavesdrop on. They can't eavesdrop on your bank, but they can then know you go to that bank, and they'll just try the username and password that you used on the non-secure site on the bank, and maybe they're suddenly in. So
always just use
a password manager. And
get a good password manager, 1Pass, LastPass, or the one built into your browser, so that you could have unique username password combinations. Those are your two biggest risks right there. And then a lot of people, everything else becomes down to your personal risk threshold. Some people are super concerned with privacy, and they don't want anyone ever to know what they do online.
And they use VPNs that encrypt all their traffic and stuff. But then, people think, I'm using a VPN, I'm super encrypted. But then the VPN provider knows everything you do online,
so
and some of the
VPN.
Do you trust your VPN provider? Because some of the VPN providers are really shady themselves, and their business is they sell the VPN really, really cheap, or even give you free VPN service, but they're tracking you and building profiles of you behind the scenes that they could sell, because now everything's going to them. So if you're going to use a VPN, make sure you really trust the VPN, that it's a name brand, high-end, reputable VPN,
and that you're paying a good a fair market value for it.
Right. Right.
Do you have any recommendations?
Nothing's free. Nothing's free.
Right. Do you have any recommendations for VPNs?
We hardly use them.
I don't. I'm not comfortable making recommendations for them, because they can change all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And gotcha. Again, for most people, if you're using secure websites, that you're pretty secure to begin with. So.
Okay. And this is the last question, and this is my own personal question. Okay. So we talked a lot about doing the dual. So right now I only have AT&T, but you guys have convinced me to get another carrier. So my question is should I get a Verizon, or should I get a T-Mobile, or is there another carrier out there that I'm not even aware of? Like, what are the top two that I should have?
So right now, it really depends upon where you're traveling and the type of data that you want. Are you wanting it on a mobile hotspot, a router, or your smartphone or tablet?
Well, right now I'm just using my phone as a hotspot.
Is your phone a dual SIM phone by chance?
It's the new iPhone 12, I think is what it is. And so okay,
you got dual SIM, so you can just get a second carrier right on the phone. You can actually get two of them and just switch between them.
Yeah, so you can for $25 you can add a visible line to your iPhone, and then you have basically can tap into Verizon. It won't. As we said, visible will be the lowest priority on Verizon's network, but that gives you access to Verizon's network. So if you're somewhere where there's no AT&T, you can still make phone calls. You can still get data.
Right, or you can just go get it if you need the higher priority data. Then you can. Verizon does have a business plan that gets you 60 gigabytes of hotspot data off of your smartphone, and that'll be at high priority, the full speed. If Visible doesn't work out for you, but Visible, I would give it a try first.
Easy thing to try. Only $25. It's $40, and then you sign up for party pay stuff. It's really easy to bring it down to $25.
That's the cheapest option. T-Mobile also does have a business data plan for like $85 a month. It's directly competitive with the AT&T Elite plan that you have. That also gives you 100 gigabytes of hotspot data off of it. So it really just depends on what your needs are.
And the T-Mobile test drive that just came out, since you got an iPhone 12 with eSIM, you could go. T-Mobile just started it. We just put a news article this week out on how to without even having to go to a T-Mobile store or do anything, or even give them a credit card number. You can try T-Mobile for 1 month for 30 gigabytes right on your iPhone, just by downloading their app and activating an eSIM.
So give it a try.
Yeah, easy peasy
That's
to
awesome.
try. Yep.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, I like to end every podcast with the same question, and that is, dun, 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 what does it mean for you to be a part of the Stonation community?
I will consider we hadn't heard about it since before.
I think it would be more applicable in regards to the mobile internet community versus just the storyteller community. So
yes, I mean it has been a really great. Just seeing the transformation for us of 15 years ago, where we felt so isolated and there wasn't a lot of community on the road, and just seeing more and more community grow both online and in person, and people connecting and
Right. When we hit the road, it took us 2 years to find someone else working remotely from an RV and forming friendships on the road other than people we visited. I think anyone hitting the road these days is
The community side
the
is
community
the
side
joy of it all. Yeah.
is there's so many options for finding your people, whether it's through podcasts and communities like you're hosting, Escapers, Our Village, just through Instagram and finding people. The options out there are so, I mean, we're envious that they're out there now, but
Yeah.
we,
It's gotten amazing. Right now, that one of the reasons we wouldn't even imagine going to a regular house life type stuff is our community is nomads. It's like our people are all over the place, and we just love being part of that and connecting and traveling and meeting up. And we have friends that we've seen now in like 15 different states, just because we keep bouncing into each other in different places and stuff. So.
Well, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The community is growing, and we do have multiple ways of connecting, which I'm sorry that you, well, I'm not sorry. I thank you for helping pioneer to, the community versus back then to what it is now, because I know you guys played a huge role in that. And because nobody would do the nomad life if they couldn't stay connected, especially, 2018 and up, and so without you guys really catalyzed that, and I appreciate all your efforts and all your work. So thank you. But it's been a pleasure having you guys on, and thank you again for your time. And hopefully maybe we can meet up in real life. That'd be nice.
awesome.
We're heading out in the van this summer, so
Stonation is a production of Park Media. The executive producer is Younghwa Kim. The audio engineer is
Stephen Grasso.
The marketing director is
Guillaume Golsong.
The original music and artists is done by
Jason Walsmith.
The sound designer is
Lorenzo Interiano.
and the webmaster is
Peng Shi.
Without any of these people, this podcast couldn't happen, so a big, huge thank you. And a big, huge thank you to you, the listener. If you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a 5-star review. This is Younghwa with Stonation, and I can't wait to share the road with you.